Hey, Hanson, this is Josh from Los Angeles. Zach, I read recently that you had a baby boy. Congratulations. I was just wondering how that affects your music and your ability to tour.
Well, Josh, I know this is hard to believe because you probably read People magazine, you see those things about the first man to ever have a baby, but I actually didn't have a baby. My wife had a baby. That person that was the man who had the baby is a woman who had a sex change. Awkward. We did just have a baby, my wife and I. And
he's actually the first man to have a baby.
Yes. And it's incredible. I mean, I think it's life-changing, but definitely something people shouldn't be afraid of. I know when we first told people we were going to have a baby, I'm 22, so I heard people say, wow, you're young, and you know that's going to change things. And though it changes your life, it's not something that I think people should be as worried about as it seems like so many are.
Hi Hanson, this is Karen from New York City. My question is, do you ever think of doing solo projects?
Dear Karen.
Hey Karen.
Dear Karen, thank you. Water Chestnut the Third.
Don't even ask.
Bacon.
Jim Gaffigan. Okay. Karen, it's funny with the solo project idea because that's come up, kind of throughout our career. Probably happens with lots of bands, but I think especially because we all sing, we all write, people assume, that there's going to be solo projects. I think we've always felt like there's a potential that, there's side projects, there's things that we'll do that will be different, producing, writing, doing side things. But at its core, I think we feel like Hanson will always be alive and well and active.
I'm going to be like, oh, I just did this solo project. I need somebody to play piano. Hey, Tay, could you come over?
Yeah.
I need a guitarist to do solo. Hi, I know you're not in my solo project.
Yeah.
So I think it's part.
I'll pay you triple scale.
Part of it is the comedy of realizing that you have a dynamic between your players, between one another's players, and it's an interesting thing to try and go outside of that world. But as well, I think we all have a lot of influences and a lot of aspirations, and musically, there's a lot of things that we all do that are not. Wouldn't necessarily fit in the sphere of what makes sense as a Hanson album. So I would say keep your eyes and ears open, but don't expect any big solo project pushes from us.
Hi Hanson, this is Steve from Washington D.C. You dropped your label and started your own label. Was that difficult to build up?
Just want to say hi, Steve. It's good to see you again. It's been a while. I think last time I saw you, we were kind of having a party in a place that you know what I'm talking about.
That might have been a different story.
There's only one Steve. Trust me.
Okay.
When we decided to form our own label, it was definitely a big decision and definitely signing on to take hold of things in a different way than we ever had as a band. We've always been very involved in everything we do, from merchandise to artwork to the way the albums are released. But when you actually are the CEOs of a label, it's still different. It's still different no matter how involved you are. It's definitely been a difficult process, but one that we feel is very rewarding because of the freedom from people who are not passionate about your project. Oftentimes when you're with a big company or a big label, you end up in a situation where, or at least in our case, we were part of huge mergers, and all of a sudden we ended up with a company that was a rap label that never would have signed us because they were a rap label and we're obviously not rap artists.
Really?
Just
only on the weekends.
Yeah. And you just end up in these kind of odd places where you're not with people who are passionate about your project or have a clear understanding of where you should go with the project or how to promote it.
And my second question is, what's the worst thing that happened to you with your old label?
Steve, this is so like you to ask more than one question. You're such a hog. I mean, at that party, I think you drank all the booze. I didn't get any.
And now he's asking all the questions.
Yeah,
exactly.
Well, he was asking about the worst moment with.
I think probably the biggest issue with our last label
was the time that it took to make the record.
Well, we were originally signed to a company called Mercury, which, to be honest, was a good home for us. We had a lot of champions, a lot of people who really understood the project.
A lot
where
of
we were
similar
going.
artists on the label.
Yeah, they had a roster that at least somewhat matched what we were doing, artists that were getting played on the same radio formats and things like that. What happened was once they were part of a huge music merger. It would have been '99.
It's the first year it happened.
It was the biggest music merger in history at the time, and so you had all these labels being put together, artists being rearranged. There was like 200 artists that were dropped
From our label.
from our label alone. So tons of artists being dropped, handful of them sticking around, and it was just a bad situation where you had a lot of unrest in the staff, of people not knowing if they had a job, so they weren't wanting to make any decisions that were the hard decisions of we're going to spend money now to be successful in 6 months or work a record. You know, it was kind of this situation where no one was where they wanted to be.
Hi Hanson, this is Tanya in New York City, and I want to know what it's like being so successful at such a young age.
Well, Tanya, success at an early age could potentially be very dangerous for some. I would say in some ways it's not undangerous for us. I mean, look what happened. I mean, he's certainly certifiable.
Oh, no, definitely.
And, you know, I'm pretty sure I am too.
Of course, that has nothing to do with success in early age.
No.
Oh, yeah,
definitely
sorry.
not.
Anyway, you know, being successful at an early point in our lives was really, in a lot of ways, a goal of ours, as crazy as that might sound. I mean, I think we were really, really ambitious as young kids. And I don't know exactly where that came from. I mean, I know that some of the ambitions that were genetically in us from some of our parents' kind of personality traits certainly probably played a role in our youth.
I remember Tay was upset because when we got signed, he was a teenager.
Yeah,
he was
I always
13.
wanted to be signed before I was a teenager.
Yeah,
I was
so-
13 before we got signed. So.
Being brothers, do you have more or less friction than a regular band? And what's the worst fight you ever got into?
Tanya, that's a hard question to answer, I would say. I mean, one of the things that's interesting about being in a band with your brothers is people that are not brothers say, "Oh, we're like brothers," and then people
In
that
like
are-
a positive way.
yeah,
like,
in a
"Oh,
positive
we're
way,
like
and then
chummy."
people that are brothers are like, well,
I
we're
hate
like,
that
we're
guy.
not brothers, definitely. We don't want to be brothers. We're bandmates, you know. So I think it's hard to separate yourself from your life situation, because I think Hanson wouldn't be what it is if we weren't brothers. If there wasn't, there's a certain dynamic that comes from the way, as well as we know each other, the way we grew up, the way that we make music together. It just all depends on the people. I mean, you have brothers that can't stand each other, and then you have brothers that get along. I think we have a lot of respect for each other. And that's made it work out over time. As far as the worst fight, I mean, I don't know.
There are plenty of fists that have been thrown. Verbal fists.
I remember in particular, I think we were on a radio junket trip, and we were going from one city to another, and there was something about the what we were doing with the promotion of the record, and then I think you guys full on like fist fight, like as we're getting
In
to
the
hotel.
car?
It was in the car, and then actually we parked the hotel, the door opened, and then it continued. So I
don't remember that. I must have lost.
Hi Hanson, my name is Amy and I'm from West Virginia, and my question is, your new tour is called Walk Around the World. Can you explain what it means and how it started? Thanks.
Hey Amy, thanks for your question. Part of the story of this whole record has been our experience in Africa. We recorded an African children's choir in Mozambique and in South Africa, and really recognizing our ability to make an impact on the issues in Africa with tangible actions, you know, with our music, with our influence, with things around us. And that inspired us to start the walks that we do at all our shows. We do 1 mile barefoot walks. And last fall, our goal was to help Tom's Shoes, which is a really cool shoe company, was to help them to give thousands of shoes to kids in Africa by selling shoes. They donate a pair every time you buy a pair of shoes.